Everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Orange Bloods Texas football YouTube channel. I'm Geoff Ketchum, joined by Anwar Richardson. We're talking Rueben Owens. He's decommitted from the University of Texas today. It's kind of a national story, and if at any point you want to do us a solid, click on the like button just before we get started. And if you haven't subscribed, we would love you to do that. Anwar, this isn't a huge surprise. There's a part of me that wonders, that's a little surprised that it didn't happen a little sooner. But to paint the picture, Rueben Owens, the number 25 overall prospect in the 2023 class. So we're talking about a guy that will be entering his junior season in a couple of months. He's from Campo, Texas. Again, some people have him rated as a 5-star. Rivals has him as a very high 4-star, I think on the cusp of a 5-star, committed to Texas back on February 25th, very early in the Steve Sarkisian era. He decommits today, I guess, a little less than 6 months later. Lead us off. Your thoughts?
I mean, it's a blow. I mean, it's just let's call it what it is. Like, it's a blow. So we can talk about, how it makes sense. And okay, look, he's a young guy, small city. I did a podcast with him a couple of months ago and talked to him, and there was, he rides a horse around, he showed me a horse in the background. So you could say, like, I don't know if Rueben Owens, when he committed, thought he was going to get as much attention as he did. And so, but I think what happened is he started getting a little bit more attention than he thought. People were still coming after him. And at some point he was like, wait a second. But what I thought was very fascinating, when I interviewed him, Catch, a couple of months ago, he told me he was committed to Texas, and he told me all the great things that he liked about Texas, and then proceeded to tell me about the visits that he still wanted to take. And now, it always threw me off. And the one thing I always wrote about in my Sunday pulpit was, I just now don't feel like this recruiting thing is going to be over with Rueben Owens.
Yeah,
because he just never seemed like he was a solid commit. Charlie Strong used to say these guys were making reservations, and that I felt like that's what he did. I think he made a reservation, and then at some point he realized, you know what, I might be able to upgrade to something else, Catch. And I think that's what happened today.
Yeah, and look, you're talking about a guy that's already, if I understand it correctly, he's visiting Texas A&M tomorrow. He's already visited a couple of schools since, he's been to Alabama.
He went to Florida as well.
Exactly. He's been to Florida, right? And the tour isn't stopping. And I think that what's curious about this for me is that he's been to Austin and been to UT twice in the last week. He came down in the middle of last week and took an unofficial visit on the heels of his Alabama visit, which I thought was, honestly, when he took it, I was like, okay, this is his way of unofficially but publicly saying, I went and took that Alabama trip, but I'm still committed to Texas. And look at me, I'm back on campus. Don't question my commitment to Texas. Mm-hmm. And then a few days later, he comes down and he is the singular player on campus connected to Arch Manning's recruitment that was seen as somewhat of a secret weapon. Like, if Texas is going to get Arch Manning, he and Rueben Owens will be able to communicate with each other. They exchange their contact information. That they're on a little text group together. And I think Texas was okay with the idea of him taking visits, because why the hell not?
Sure.
But I think they would have loved to have kept his commitment for a lot of reasons, as bogus as it might be, right? Like, it might just be a reservation and they're not going to charge your credit card until the day of, right? Like, there's a lot of ways that you could handle that. Texas clearly was okay with Rueben Owens doing the circuit. He's had every right to check it out. And Texas has kids coming in on visits that are committed to other schools. Like, it goes that way now in recruiting. This is not the Mac Brown years anymore. But that he's decommitting 5 days after taking his second visit and hanging out with Arch Manning. The timing is, if he commits 3 weeks ago, it feels like less of a blow, I think, than it does today. It would totally make sense that before the month of June began, go ahead and decommit and take your visits, I think everybody would have been like, that's nothing against Texas. It is really hard to decommit 5 days after you visited there twice, and for it not to have the appearance that it is a little bit of a blow for if you're Texas and you can't keep him for more than a week after he's been on your campus twice. I think it's an eye opener.
It's basically, Catch, you know what it's like? It's like going away on vacation with the wife and then coming back and filing for a divorce. And at some point you're like, man, something happened on that vacation, because you could have filed beforehand. But the moment you guys got back in, you went to the attorney on Monday and you were filed like a couple of days later, right?
Oh, how many? Look, you've been in town long enough that can I mention your personal status for a little bit?
Go for it.
I'm just saying, I can remember when you were semi-dating someone once upon a time.
Yes.
And there was a trip that was coming up.
Oh, yeah.
And you were like, God, if I go on the trip,
yeah,
I might have to stay with her.
Yeah.
Because you can't go out and have a good time. And then 72 hours later, break up. They're going to be like, what the hell happened on the trip?
Correct. And I was like, if I go on this trip, I'm committed
for like another month.
For a month. You can't break up when we get back. So I'm like, well, we're just not going to go on this trip. It was, it was a Cancun trip anyway. So yes, that happened. And so
he went on the Cancun trip, Anwar, and broke up with her 5 days later.
He did the reverse Anwar. I was like, nah, don't do it, man. Don't, if you thinking, because I go by the Jeremy Foley thing, like whatever needs to be done inevitably should be done immediately, right? So if you're thinking about you're not going to be with someone, just need to go ahead and probably cut it off at this point. And he was clearly he was on the fence about what he wanted to do, and then he came back. But it is here's the blow, Catch, and this is where it's to your point. I want to validate what you said and then add to it. The timing sucks for Texas. The timing sucks for Sarkisian, because to your point, it's 5 days after, and you wonder, like, usually you're on a high right after a trip like that. Usually it'd be great. And for him to say like, nah, not only am I, not lukewarm on Texas, I'm reopening my thing. Like, he didn't have to reopen anything this week, Catch. He could have done that next summer and said, I've decided to reopen, but he decided to reopen it now. And here's the tough part for Texas fan, and here's the tough part for recruiting. Texas, this is now the second premier athlete that has decommitted from Texas over the past couple of months. The first one was Evan Stewart, who you said in your column you might have him in your LSR as the number one player in the state of Texas in the 2022 class.
He's getting close. He's in that convo. He's amazing.
So you're talking about losing potentially the number one receiver in the state of Texas who's decommitted, and then you're potentially losing the number one running back in the state of Texas for the 2023 class. Those are two big blows, Catch. Like those blows cannot be ignored. And I want to get your reaction to that, because I think I know what these recruits are thinking, but I want to see what you say to that, knowing that two big blows within the last couple of months.
It's funny. We weren't arguing about this on Slack, but we were having this exact same conversation on Slack. And, I was devil's advocate a little bit in that this isn't so much about Sark. If you're a Texas fan and you want to be completely optimistic and spin this, you can say this isn't about Sark. This is just about the kid wanting to take visits, and and you can spin it to not be in a vacuum that big of a deal.
Yes.
I mean, who knows? The kid may be back in Austin in like a week. You and I would both agree that with Rueben Owens, if he recommitted in 3 days, would you be completely shocked?
No.
So this is an instance, and you and I both like Rueben Owens. I don't say that as like a shot at the kid at all. It is an acknowledge. I have said this before. He's the most important athlete to ever come out of his hometown. it means a lot. There are probably people in his high school that think him being uncommitted helps more eyeballs come to the other seniors and juniors on that high school team that might not come scout El Campo High School if he's not available, right? I mean, that happens with big time commitments like that. And to him be from an area that he's from, there's all these weird little pressures, not the least of which isn't, hey, are you making the right decision for yourself? So I was surprised he committed in the first place for exactly all of the reasons that just led to his decommitment.
Correct.
And so people are like, well, why did he commit? Because he's young and he doesn't know the way the recruiting game works like us old guys.
Yeah.
Us old guys could see this coming a mile away, but he's 14, 15, however old a sophomore in high school is. And I think I think it sounded good. I think no kid at his high school that I'm aware of in the modern history of the last 30 years has received a scholarship offer from the University of Texas. So I think when he committed, it was a huge deal locally for him. But I think Nick Saban starts FaceTiming you and Dabo is you know what I mean? Like the first time Nick Saban. And the thing is, these kids never know. They never understand it. Every kid that I've ever ranked number one in the state as a sophomore, I once interviewed Sergio Kendall. This is back in like 2005. Number one player in the state, arguably a generational talent. First time I talked to him, his top two schools were Missouri and SMU. I said, why are Missouri? That's think about it, right? Mm-hmm. Why would SMU and Missouri? And he was like, I just don't know if I can even play at some of these other schools. Like he didn't believe it yet. It was too big. It was too big to tell a kid, Nick Saban in 3 months is going to be like kissing your butt. Mm-hmm. They just can't fathom it. And then when it happens, it rightfully blows their mind. And you and I can see that coming. They can't. And in the last 3 weeks, I'm guessing that kid has had his mind blown. He's gone to Florida. He's gone to Alabama. And his world changed. And I totally understand. So from that perspective, I don't want to make too big of a deal out of it. It makes a ton of sense. But in a 30,000 feet from the sky view, the two best players that have committed to Steve Sarkisian since he's been at Texas have both decommitted. I mean, Evans, there's nobody rated higher than I think either of these two. Malik Murphy, where he's ranked, is not on the same level right now as, and Jaden Blue at this point clearly isn't. So it's more not an issue with Sark and this coaching staff, but you can't completely dismiss it and say it's nothing, because you got to ask yourself, would this have happened if would this have happened if both these kids were in the state of Alabama? Maybe, but maybe probably not. Evan Stewart's not decommitting from Alabama after he commits. So it's just a reminder, Texas got to win some football games. It is not on the level, no matter how badly they want to be. They're not on the level with all of the schools that they're currently having to compete against in recruiting. And that shakes out a lot right now.
It's 100%. It's one of the things I was thinking about potentially writing for Sunday. I mean, these kids, and I keep saying it, in our videos, like, hey, Vince Young, these kids were 1 year old, 2 years old. Like, it means something to us because we're old. It doesn't necessarily mean as much to them. And these kids are looking and saying, okay, but, Texas is Texas. I don't know. It's a shoulder shrug at this moment. And they're going to programs that are winning. Like, you don't see kids turning down Texas to go to programs that you would consider to be less than. I mean, you don't see kids necessarily, a ton of kids turn down Texas and go to SMU. SMU has a great program. No disrespect to SMU. Just talk about Power 5 versus non-Power 5, okay? You don't see a lot of kids saying, I'm going to go to Baylor instead of Texas, right? But what you're seeing is kids who are at Texas saying, you know what? I'll go somewhere else. And to your point, when Nick Saban calls, you know, he has that thing. It's an aura. It's to everything. And it's the same thing that Sarkisian, he benefited from when he was in Alabama. But it ain't no fun when the Rabbits got the gun. And now all of a sudden you're on the other side of that. And they're telling his kids, why are you committed to Texas? Let's go. Let me show you a couple of things about Texas that you may not have looked at. Negative, you know, go into NFL draft, wins and losses, Vince Young, Colt McCoy, all the years between that. Now let me show you what we've done recently. Blah, 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 blah. So do you want to go down there and try to rebuild? Or do you just want to come here and just be a cog in the machine and go to the NFL in 3 years? Do you really want to do this? But you should really think about this, because I don't really know if you really thought this out. And then you're a young kid, you're saying, I haven't thought this out. To your point, Ketch, Rueben Owens committing is equivalent to the young couple that gets married at like 21 years old. You're just looking at it like, oh, that's not going to last. I mean, because you understand, like, he's got his boys. He's still going to want to go out. He's still going to want to party. They're young and all their friends are doing stuff. You understand it's just a matter of time.
That's a great metaphor, Anwar. It really is.
It's just right. It's just a matter of time. Go ahead. Tell me how great it was, Ketch. I want to hear it.
No, I mean, it is actually like chef's kiss perfect, because, and I will use that moving forward, because the same way I would look at a 21-year-old getting married is the same way I looked at his commitment when he made it. Everybody wanted to imagine you're like at the reception afterwards and everybody is excited. It would be really impossible for me to hide like the divorce rate's 50%, and that's for all grown-ups. That includes the old people. It's hard for older people to be married. You guys have like a 10% chance. Just so you know, I'm willing to celebrate with you, but it does a little bit feel like celebrating Texas beating Rice in football. Mm-hmm. Like it's hard. You know, it doesn't really mean anything. And yes, that's what. And so this isn't, I think the best way I could compliment you is I will steal that in the future. You will read it in a column and you'll be like, he literally just like stole it.
Hey, you know what? How many videos did we do? And Sunday morning, that's what I'm writing. And you have to like, damn it, I got to find something else. So it's all good.
It's so funny. I was convinced that would happen on Sunday. Yeah. I told you with Arch Manning, and I was like, I don't care. I'm writing about Arch. This isn't a reason to panic if you're Texas, but I think it is a very sobering reminder that they have work to do. And this coaching staff, they've recruited big time guys. A lot of these guys have done it at more than one school. I mean, Jeff Banks has been a powerhouse at multiple places. I mean, these aren't guys that are incapable, but it's not raining yet. And it wasn't raining before Rueben Owens. Rueben Owens was the only guy that was a national headline when he committed. And, you know, there haven't been enough of those guys that when you lose one, you can be casual about it. It's no reason to go like scream fire in a crowded theater, but you're going to hear Anwar and I say this a lot on these videos. Got to win 10 games in 2023 or 2021, because the problem is, and it's not, this is, I've been keep talking about this, and I've been telling you that the 2022 class is giving this Texas coaching staff a pass. The 2023 class is not. And I have a feeling that before Rueben Owens ever seriously considers Texas again, he will need to see now, I think, the same thing that Arch Manning needs to see.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to look at the Texas football schedule. You know, what they've got to do, Ketch, is they've got to find a way to, start strong, and then they've got to get these guys on campus for a game that matters, where it's lights out, right? So I'm looking at like the schedule. You know, maybe they got to bring in guys for that Oklahoma State game. That's October the 16th.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you make that into a big game. They're at Baylor, they're at Iowa State.
Yeah, I think you got to get them in that first weekend. I think if you're Texas, you can't wait.
Okay.
If at all possible, it'll be hot.
Yeah.
It'll be hot as hell.
Yeah.
But the thing I think you somewhat worry, I think you want to get those kids in the stadium at night and really see when Texas football puts 100,000 people in the stadium, which it will, it'll feel big time the way Texas talks about itself.
Well, Louisiana's at 3:30 in the afternoon.
Well, I just don't like waiting until the middle of October to be your big weekend. Ideally, there'd be a night game in the third week of September. And so
I mean, that's Rice.
Maybe this year.
I mean, here it goes. It goes Louisiana to start off, at Arkansas, home versus Rice, home versus Texas Tech. Then they go to TCU, then they go to Dallas.
The Tech game, has that been set yet?
It's September 25th, no time.
That's the weekend. And, you know, I think you hope that that's a primetime game that's got some juice, that's on somewhere at night. And yeah, I think that's the weekend you've got to get a ton of kids in town. You got to get you got to have Rueben Owens at the Tech game. And you need Texas to be undefeated. You need that crowd to be popping. You need them to win. And then you need to go downtown and have a great time while students are on campus. And, you know, suddenly I think if Texas can get rolling like that, I think they're going to be just fine. You know, it is what it is. I mean, you and we're going to do 100 shows between now and more like 85 shows between now and when the season starts. And a lot of these themes are going to remain. It is impossible to get away from the truth that they have to win. And if they don't, they put themselves in an impossible position with the 2023 class, because those kids will then be they'll start saying, well, I want to wait and see. And the problem is all their decisions start getting made like the Brockermeyers a year ago before Texas will ever have another shot they're Eminem, man. They got one shot. Mm-hmm. It's them and Papa Doc at the shelter. And if you lose that, it's over. And I don't want to say that's completely the case for Sark, but damn, it'll be tough. It'll be tough if it'll just be tough. I don't want to it's a completely different podcast to talk about what happens if this season goes 8-4, and it just sounds depressing. And I'm not in a depressed mood. I'll just say there's no reason to call for panic. Last thing I'll say about it is I think you all should be able to look at this and see it for exactly what it is and what it means. It is not rocket science.
Yeah. No, my closing thing is just, guys, it just in the remarks, always remember these kids are young, and be careful what you say about them. Someone texted me and they were like, well, did he have character issues? And, with Sark, maybe Sark didn't like him. And I was like, we didn't see that wasn't seemingly a question when he was committed. And every time a kid decommits, then it's time to let's say, something on him. Let me pile on him, something like that.
He's a young kid, guys.
Very young.
He's closer to not being a teenager in the other direction than he is to go to war and drink. He is. He's a kid. Remember that. That's a great final point, Anwar. Remember in the comments, these dudes are kids, man. And yeah, that's it. Look, for myself and Anwar Richardson, come on, Sixers, do better than that. Come on. Sorry. Just come on, Ben Simmons. I want to curse. So you know what? Real quick.
Curse.
I'm not going to curse. Ben,
you're in a hotel room. I think you can do whatever you want right over there.
Ben Simmons can't make a free throw. Devin Booker can make a free throw. I think Kendall Jenner chose correctly. For Geoff Ketchum and Anwar Richardson, we'll see you on Friday.